these are tenured professors who for a generation have been teaching Americans toxic lies. It's time to get the microphone back.
Welcome to RealClearPolitics on Sirius XM for Thursday, May 22nd. I'm Andrew Walworth. I'm joined now by RCP co-founder and president Tom Bevan and Washington bureau chief Carl Cannon. So, guys, last night in Washington, D.C., 2 Israeli embassy staff members were assassinated in what appears to be a targeted anti-Semitic attack. The victims were a young couple who were about to become engaged. They were leaving an event at the Capitol Jewish Museum. The woman is Sarah Milgram. She was a U.S. citizen. Her fiancé-to-be was Yaron Yashinsky of Israel. Tom, it's a horrible event, calls out for condemnation. What has been the reaction so far?
I mean, it's a horrible, a terrible event happened right in our nation's capital. And the suspect is a 30-year-old Chicagoan, actually, sort of a far left activist, and who seems to have been radicalized. I mean, he posted this manifesto on social media, apparently to an account that was attributed to him, talking about taking action on behalf of Palestinians. And so, look, I think this shows that this is serious stuff, and the people are getting radicalized by this, and anti-Semitism is a real deal, and there are consequences. And so, look, Ilhan Omar was walking to her car this morning, and someone walked up to her, and this was captured on tape, and asked what she thought of it, and she couldn't even offer a single word of condolence, not a single word of condemnation. She just said, "I'm just going to go now," and got in her car and drove away, which is just mind-numbing that we have representatives in our Congress who can't seem to bring themselves to condemn this kind of violence, and that's part of the reason we end up here in the first place, I believe.
Yeah. Carl, what do you think?
Well, I don't blame her for this, although that's an appalling lack of grace. But, who I do blame, these college professors who teach these kids that a genocide is taking place. That's the word they never stop using. This is against a death cult, Hamas, that has called for the genocide of Jews around the world and the destruction of Israel. And when you hear these college kids chant, globalize the intifada, that's what this is. And this young woman, she's born in Kansas City. She's an American. She's not Israeli. She's Jewish. These people are killed because they're Jewish on our soil by a person, Tom pointed out, had been radicalized in America. And when some functionary with the United Nations says, as happened this week, if the trucks start rolling in Gaza, 14,000 babies in Gaza will starve in 48 hours, 24 hours. Well, the truth is that what the report really said was that in the next 5 months, if the food doesn't, 14,000 kids, not babies, will face possibility of malnutrition. But this goes around, it's repeated by NBC, it gets 4 million hits on YouTube. Every person in this country and Europe and in the Middle East who repeats these blood libels against Jews, every person who says, thinks it's cute to wear this Palestinian scarf, they're complicit in this. When there's attacks by right wingers, violent attacks, people quickly go to the rhetoric of conservatives, and okay, fair enough. Let's go to the rhetoric of these people on these college campuses in the United Nations, and sometimes even in Congress. The congresswoman that Tom mentioned, plus Rashida Tlaib, and these other people who won't condemn violence against Jews, they're complicit too. That's my view.
Yeah. Tom, this comes on the heels, too, of yesterday at Columbia University, there was the graduation, and there were the protests. And Claire Shipman, former journalist, who's the president there, sort of gave a shout out to Mahmoud Khalil, inexplicable from my point of view why she would do that. She said, "I know many in our community are mourning the absence of our graduate, Mohammed Khalil. It does seem like there is a disconnect in some people's mind between the rhetoric or what they say and then acts like this, which seemed to me there was a connection."
Well, yeah. I mean, Claire Shipman's the acting president. I don't know how long she's going to be in that job, but look, clearly there is, particularly at these universities, and Carl's right. I mean, this is part of the problem, is that we've allowed this behavior, this stuff to be taught, this there's a radicalization that is taking place among young people across America, and we're not doing enough to push back against it. And someone like Claire Shipman, who's in a very prominent position, a position of power, and at a university that has been one of the hot spots, if you will, with these protests, I think it's doubly incumbent upon her to push back on some of these things, not to celebrate or laud some of this behavior. And so look, I'm sure she feels like she's under a ton of pressure from these folks. They are and this is the problem when institutions like this get captured. It's very hard to root that stuff out and change things and turn them around. And I think she finds herself in a tough position, but
Well,
I
Tom,
agree with you. It's not a great look.
These are tenured professors who for a generation have been teaching Americans toxic lies. It's time to get the microphone back.
Well, that's what the Trump administration has been trying to do, but obviously that the view there is this is against academic freedom, but this is the debate that we've been having. I mean, these institutions have failed to reform themselves. They've failed to do it on their own, and so they're getting outside pressure from donors and from the administration and from others to force them into reforming because they just haven't done it themselves.
Yeah. Well, I want to let's change subjects here. I'm a little abrupt here, but I do want to talk about this House bill. It passed, the budget bill, 215 to 214, so a one-vote margin. This passed out of the House. It relieves taxes on tips, overtime, car loan interest. So a couple of Trump's campaign promises have been fulfilled for now. It also offers parents $1,000 if they open what are called Trump accounts for their children. Trump put out this tweet. He said, or social media post, he said, "This is arguably the most significant piece of legislation that will ever be signed in the history of our country. Now it's time for our friends in the U.S. Senate to get to work. Send this bill to my desk as soon as possible." Carl, most important piece of legislation in the history of the United States?
It's the most important piece of legislation this year. I'd give him that. No, it is not more important than the Civil Rights Act of 1964. No, it is not more important than the Marshall Plan. No. But, it's a budget bill, and they're doing it by the reconciliation process, hoping to forestall, filibuster in the Senate. Tip of the cap again to Mike Johnson. He turns out to be a kind of quiet superstar, rounding up these cats and getting, herding cats and getting them to get one margin victory. I think he had a couple of defectors, but we should point out, and I don't want to debate all of the ins and outs of it. We can talk about that if and when the thing passes the Senate and these provisions are actually law. But MSNBC had a take. They had, a former Democrat in the Obama administration on explaining, what was wrong with this. What was wrong with it is the trims to Medicaid mostly, and the couple other things that affect the lowest 20%. And he said, if you take these cuts and then you look at the upper 10%, they're getting, in other words, rich people were, getting money at the expense of poor people. But if you looked at the chart objectively, what you would see is that this is all still deficit spending. What if you actually cared about fiscal responsibility, you'd do all the cuts on the poor and none of the tax breaks for the upper people, and you'd still be in deficit. And it made me realize that, nobody even gives lip service anymore to a balanced budget or fiscal responsibility. I don't know what they
Well,
expect to happen, but
that's not totally true, Carl. I mean, Chip Roy and some of his folks have been saying they push back on this, and Thomas Massey, and they've been talking about how this bill, they wanted more cuts to some of the green energy stuff. A lot of that stuff was left in, and they were pissed about it and trying to get more and more cuts. But then you've got the SALT folks on the other side. So, and ultimately what it comes down to is will Republicans deliver a victory to Trump? Or are they going to throw in with Democrats and tank the bill and deliver a real blow to Trump? This is
I take that point, Tom. That's right, and that I agree. But what I'm saying is that what if anybody actually wanted a balanced budget, we'd need tax increases and steep spending cuts. We need them both. It's not either or. If you really cared about a balanced budget, you'd have to do both.
Well, the argument, Carl, though, is that by keeping the Trump tax cuts where they are, you are incentivizing people to work more and grow the economy, and that you cannot you cannot raise taxes to the point where it will save this problem. The only way to solve this problem is to grow the economy. That's the classic supply side. I know you're about to jump at me, but
you're a handsome young guy. But I interviewed Arthur Laffer for the first time when he was 30 years younger than you are now, and that's what he was saying. And I take the point, but it's not an absolute law. You can't year after year after year spend more money than you take in, which is what this government does.
Well, that's true. We may never see a balanced budget. I guess that's true. The question is how big the debt's going to be. And in terms of Massey, because you mentioned him, Thomas Massey of Kentucky, he had the quote of the day. I thought he said, "We're not rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic tonight. We're putting coal in the boiler and setting a course for the iceberg." So there's one person who cares about.
I mean, he's consistent. You got to give him that. And look, some of these guys, this is the problem, is that the margins in the House are so small that, for the folks who want to stand on principle, they're going to end up basically giving Democrats a victory. And I talked to Phil Wegman about this on the show yesterday. I mean, this is Trump's entire legislative agenda. It's all in this bill. He's got nothing else. And it's like, if this doesn't go forward, then imagine the headlines, imagine the glee on the part of the Democrats who would have, and again, still possible because we got to go to the Senate, and who knows what they're going to do. They've got resistance in the Senate as well, and a little bit better margin to work with there. They can lose a couple folks, but still not a ton. And they absolutely, they have to get this thing done in reconciliation. And so there's still some road to go here before this, gets to Trump's desk, and then they can really celebrate. But to Carl's point, pretty good job by Mike Johnson just to get it out of the House with a 1-vote margin.
Yeah, you're right. So people know this. It's going to go to the Senate. Then the House will come back. They'll have to work together. And so we've got a lot to work left to do on this. My main point is that there's going to be a lot of time for us to talk about it. So we're not going to talk about it anymore right now. We're going to take a break and be back right after this. Welcome back to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth, and I'm here with Carl Cannon and Tom Bevan. And guys, Elon Musk continues to indicate that he is going to step back from politics. He's speaking about his political donations and campaigning. Musk said, quote, "I'm going to do a lot less in the future. I think I've done enough." Carl, Musk has been at the center of so much of Trump's first 100 days. Do you think he's really going to be heading back to the private sector? And more importantly, why is he doing it?
Well, it sounds like he lost a power struggle there. But also Tesla's stock, had tanked. I guess him announcing he's paying more attention to Tesla actually got just that word, the stock went back up. But he runs Tesla, which is, you'd think that'd be a full-time job. It's one of the most innovative car companies in the world. He runs SpaceX, which is his vanity project, but very complex. And he runs what we used to call Twitter. He owns it. So he's got three things. Any one of those would be a full-time job. Then he took this on. Doge ran into some problems. The Atlantic had a story about it. government isn't a company. He took over when he took over Twitter before he renamed it. He fired about 2/3 of the staff, and the things just kept humming along. I think I've said this before on our show. I think he got maybe the wrong view of that. There were more gold brickers than in the workforce than he knew. And he had a philosophy that he told to other cabinet secretaries, and they didn't appreciate it, which is that his philosophy, if they didn't have to rehire some of the people they fired, they hadn't cut enough. Well, if you're running a company like Twitter, maybe, but if you're running a government with essential services like Medicare and Social Security and putting out forest fires and doing all the things government does, even these very loyal to Trump, even these loyal cabinet secretaries resented it and thought it was heavy-handed and didn't think and a lot of them didn't think it was workable. So I think he got pushed back. I think he got tired of it, and he also has these businesses to run. So it made sense. He lasted longer in that job than I predicted he would. We had a pool. I think you or Tom won it. I certainly didn't.
Yeah, I can't. That's one thing, Tom, is I think all three of us thought that the bromance would end at some point, that at some point Trump wouldn't be able to share the spotlight with Musk. But that's not the impression I'm getting. Right. My impression is that the bromance might continue. It was really a decision on his part that, hey, I've got other things to do with my life than Doge right now.
Well, look, I do think there was some pushback from inside the administration, from some of these cabinet secretaries, and certainly he got his fair share, more than his fair share of bad press. I was thinking about this the other day. Just imagine if the administration was doing something, if Elon Musk had been doing something that the press approved of, right? And he got all these glowing stories. How different that would look and feel than what he got, which was just absolute blistering attacks every single day. These stories about all these, sob stories about workers that have been laid off, and all these leak stuff about his tech bros are trying to get access to all this personal information. I mean, it was just one thing after another. And so the media played a big part in the resistance to Doge and to Elon Musk. And I thought that Atlantic article that Carl referenced had sort of a triumphal tone to it, that and I think the media participated in this as well. But I don't think the problem is running the government like a business. And we talked about this repeatedly over the course of the first 100 days. I do think there wasn't enough sort of foresight and planning in terms of telling the public, here's the problem, here's what we're going to do, here's why we're going to do it, and prepping them for some of these changes, because they did come off as sort of shocking and too fast in some people's opinion. And I think Musk also, it wasn't so much that he was trying to run it like a business. I think he's used to being a decision maker and a decider and just doing whatever the hell he wants, and people taking his orders and doing it. And he wasn't collaborative enough. I mean, he got sideways with a couple of these cabinet secretaries because, he was just doing shit. It was like, he's appointing a new IRS director. Oops, that's Scott Bessen's job. Like they get in a fight. Like he was just, cutting USAID. And by the way, that's Marco. You should have sat down with Rubio and said, okay, how are we going to do this? What are we going to do? Let's do it together, as opposed to him just going in there and doing it the way that he did. So I think that was part of it. It was a style thing that ended up causing him some clashes within the administration. And ultimately, I think he probably decided too, like, look, I've done about as much as I can do. I broke as much stuff as I could in the first 100 days. And now I'm going to go back and work on my businesses.
It was always part of the plan that he would go back to the private sector too.
That's right. That's right. And he never even took a full-time job. So I think there was some statutory requirement, although the Trump administration probably wouldn't care, that he had to leave within 6 months. But one of the things Tom said, I agree with Tom about the collaboration with the government and that this mantra that comes out of Silicon Valley, move fast and break things, doesn't necessarily work in government. But I also thought that Elon Musk and President Trump were needless, and other people in the Justice Department like Ed Martin were needlessly callous. I live in the Washington area. There's tens of thousands of federal employees here. Most of them love this country and work hard, do what they and took their job because they wanted to be public servants. And to slander an entire class of people. To fire, first of all, you fired people. You fired people that you didn't know. I'm talking about my son here, Tom, among other people. To fire people that you didn't know what they did and what the agency did. To say that the USAID people that they hate America. That stuff's over the top.
Who said they hate America? Who said they hate America? I don't remember that, honestly.
Yeah, well, I'll send you the link. Wait.
Okay.
Let's talk about this. So this hurt Musk. This hurt Trump. They went about it the wrong way. You can't fire people and be callous about it. Sometimes people have to be let go. It's government. It may not happen in the old Soviet Union, but it happens in any economy that works. But you can't sound like you're happy about it. And you can't tell these people they deserve to be fired when you didn't give them a reason and you didn't really know what they did. I think that this Doge thing wasn't just a matter of not communicating about the budget. I think it was some of the things they said offended people. This is why Senator Van Hollen went after Marco Rubio the other day. These are a lot of his constituents that these people ran down. And so, I think there's a lesson there too for future budget cutters. Is that the way you do it is important.
Well, it's a little early to pass judgment on whether Doge has been a success or a failure. I do think that. We've got, and with him leaving,
I didn't say it had been a success or a failure. What I said is that if you're gonna tell people that they're losing their livelihood, you should be sympathetic, not gleeful. And this was a problem. And I don't think we ought to repeat that. I don't think we ought to make the problem worse on our show.
I guess my contention is not that folks were gleeful, okay, but that people get laid off all the time. We see these headlines and the media reports it, 10,000 getting laid off at IBM or wherever, right? And they're just headlines. They're factual statements about, right? And this stuff happens in the private sector every single day. And the media, right, does not go and interview those folks and say, do these profiles of them. And they did in this case. And there are a variety of reasons. And one of the reasons they did it, Carl, is because a lot of the folks, the journalists in Washington, I'm sure, have relatives or friends who were part of the people who were affected. And so they have a personal connection, and there was an extra level of empathy there that they didn't have for an IBM worker or someone at one of these corporations that gets laid off every single day. And then the other piece of it, I think, is they wanted to hurt Donald Trump, his agenda, and they wanted to hurt Elon Musk, and so that's why it was done, and it was effective.
Well, I want to move on, guys. Look. Well, let's do one more. I have one more question on this because I do want to look forward a little bit, Carl. And that's, Elon Musk put about $260 million into the last election cycle by some estimates. That seems to be what a lot of Republicans are worried about right now, is that and it cuts both ways, doesn't it? I mean, for one, he's sort of become a lightning rod. So if you remove him from the field, it's one less thing for Democrats to point to. But at the same time, it's a lot of money that he pumped into Republican campaigns. And I know in Virginia, with the governor's race coming up, they're a little worried that they were sort of counting on a little cash infusion from Musk.
I don't know that they expected him to spend $250 million every election cycle. It surprised people that he even got involved. But even as rich as he is, I he would have. I'm not sure he could do that every time. But look, they're not going to have trouble raising money in 2026 and in 2028. That's I think Jess Unruh, the great speaker of the California legislature, used to say, money is the mother's milk of politics. Well, we are awash in milk. We have milk. We're floating on rivers of milk. Kamala Harris spent what was it, Tom? $1.5 billion?
Yeah, something like that.
And all she did was her polling went down after the campaign started. It was a net loss of votes for $1.5 billion. So I don't know that I don't think that Republicans I don't think they were counting on Elon Musk to do this forever, is what I'm saying. But you're right. He spent a lot of money. He did.
Yeah. Well, Tom, we got just a couple of minutes left in this segment. I do want to talk about Jake Tapper's book, which we've talked about a lot. The tour continues, but he was with Katie Couric, and he said this about Hunter Biden. He said, "I think Hunter was driving the decision-making for the family in a way that he was almost like a chief of staff of the family. It's bizarre because I think he is provably, demonstrably unethical, sleazy, and prone to horrible decisions." And Sally Quinn was on the Tara Palmieri show and accused
Dr.
Jill of elder abuse. So people are sort of turning their attention to the family. This story just has legs. What do you make of it?
Well, they should turn their attention to the family. And once again, I mean, this is not, I mean, Jake Tapper's talking as if he just discovered this or something, or that we didn't know that Jill Biden was one of the driving forces in this entire drama. We knew that Hunter Biden was hunkered down and playing a huge role in his father's administration. A lot of these decisions about whether to run again or get in and out of the race when they were at Camp David or when they were, in Rehoboth Beach or whatever. This is not for those of us who were paying attention. It's not news, and it is part of the problem because these are two folks within the family that probably were making a lot more decisions than we were aware of at the time, because we now know, Jill Biden, she's the one who urged him to run anyway. She's the one, by the way, who would have known about his cancer diagnosis more than anyone else. And I'm sure Hunter knew it too. The family was the core of this. Remember, Joe Biden said Hunter Biden's his son Hunter was the smartest man he ever met. And he had always had great respect for him and valued his opinion. So yeah, this is not a surprise. This is once more the media sort of, pretending like they were a babe in the woods for the last 4 years. And look what I discovered. Hunter Biden actually had influence with his father.
I had a different reaction, Andy, about the Hunter Biden vignette nugget, which is that so Joe Biden did all of these pardons, but a lot of them by auto pen, and like 2,000 of them. And I'm wondering, so if Hunter Biden was functioning as basically White House chief of staff, did Hunter Biden actually pardon himself? Right. Because this is what the Democrats are up in arms, because Trump held out the possibility he might pardon himself. Maybe Hunter Biden actually did that, and he's the first to ever do it. It does make him look smart, actually.
Well, all right. Well, we're going to take a break right now. You're listening to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Andrew Walworth. I'm here with Carl and Tom. Don't go away. We'll be back with more right after this.
Welcome back to Real Clear Politics on Sirius XM. I'm Tom Bevan, co-founder and president of RCP. Joined now by Richard Porter. He's a contributor to Real Clear Politics and a former RNC committeeman for the state of Illinois. Richard, good to have you back.
Good to be here, Tom.
Always great to talk to you. Okay, so let's talk politics of, we finally have a vote that was taking place in the House. The big, beautiful bill passed by one vote, 215, 214.
Right.
It's now going to move on to the Senate, and who knows what's going to happen from there, Richard. But what are the how important was this vote for Trump politically, and what happens now that these members are finally on record, all of them, in terms of being for or against the big, beautiful bill?
The big, beautiful bill is the opening bell for the midterm elections, Tom. This bill encompasses really the entire scope of Donald Trump's economic policy agenda, a pro-growth agenda that's also populist, that was driving tax cuts for seniors, tax cuts for the folks working for tips, and actually increased the deduction for just about everybody in blue states for the state and local taxes that they pay. It's going to lead to a reduction of regulations, and it's setting the stage for further cuts through the appropriation process to reduce spending and to reduce the deficit. And it's removed illegal aliens from Medicaid and from food stamps, and it imposes work requirements for able-bodied males to participate in Medicaid and food stamps. These are all very popular policies. And what you see is that every single Democrat lined up against the waitress at the corner diner and said she ought to be paying taxes on her tips. You see them voting to protect illegal aliens from losing their Medicaid benefits. Well, people don't want to be spending their hard-earned dollars for people that aren't even supposed to be here. So I think on issue after issue, the Democrats have now boxed themselves into a corner against pro-growth, pro-populist policies that are encompassed in the big, beautiful bill. And in states like Illinois, where you have 2 members of Congress that are running for an open Senate seat, they're going to have to run defending a vote that would have increased taxes significantly on the people of Illinois and would have reduced, the opportunity for other spending for things Illinoisans care about. So, look, there are 13 congressional districts, Tom, where Donald Trump won, and their seats are held by Democrats. You can bet that this vote is going to be central to the Trump campaign's focus on winning more seats in the midterm election. And so I think this is the opening bell, Tom.
I was just going to say, I mean, for most Democrats, they're in safe districts. It doesn't matter. But there are a handful of swing districts that are out there. That's what these elections always come down to. And when the margins are as thin as they are, every seat counts. And so, as you mentioned, 13 districts that Trump won but are held by Democrats. So how are they going to defend? I mean, the line has been from Hakeem Jeffries that this is, Donald Trump snatching Medicaid from the hands of the most vulnerable, giving tax breaks to his rich buddies and billionaires. It's kind of the standard playbook, standard line, but will it work?
Well, it just doesn't. It runs into the facts. The only new tax cuts are for waitresses, right? I mean, that's the tax on tips removal, and also for seniors, reducing the tax on Social Security. So, and when they talk about cutting Medicaid from the most vulnerable, they don't say who those people are. Well, they're talking about people who are in this country illegally. They're not Americans. They're not supposed to be here. And some states, unwisely, Illinois being one of them, have offered these Medicaid benefits to people who are not even citizens of the United States or here legally on any basis. So I think that when you peel this back, this will be a very unpopular vote in the upcoming election. You're going to have to defend taking Illinoisans' monies from them, supporting a tax hike on Illinoisans, opposing a tax cut in the form of the SALT tax and, deduction increase. So, look, I think it's again, Trump has very cleverly painted his opponents into a corner where there's no really good answer. Now they have to decry big spending government that is that's a debt bomb. Well, where did all that spending come from, right? I mean, the baseline was exploded by Biden with his inflationary spending under the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which actually boosted inflation. So now the Democrats are going to be suddenly, fiscal hawks, but they won't ever specify how they'd cut spending. Just don't cut spending on any of the social programs that actually help people like illegal aliens. So they're in a terrible spot.
Well, you said it's going to reduce taxes. The one thing it's not going to reduce, as you just pointed out, is the deficit, right? And this was the problem that Chip Roy and some of these other folks, Thomas Massey, had, which, it ended up getting through. But, how big of a concern is that? I agree with you. I don't think Democrats are going to make that part of their argument that, this bill explodes the deficit.
Right. Democrats for lower spending. Really?
Yeah. No, I'm not sure that's going to work. But
where?
But
right.
I did see, there were a lot of folks there are a significant number of folks on the right who are not happy about the fact that the deficit is not getting addressed. This bill still has to go through the Senate, and we'll see what changes are made there. I can't imagine the Senate's going to do anything, that would cut more from this bill. If anything, they're probably going to go in the other direction, which might make it even more problematic if it has to go back to the House or into some conference committee, right?
I'm not so sure. I'm not sure what the dynamics there are going to be. And it's really the people at the margin and what they're pushing for. But what I will say is that this doesn't, this sets an upper bound on the appropriations process. And there is a laser focus on taking the DOGE cuts and working them through the baseline. And so those are still ongoing. This does not foreclose further cuts through appropriations. And I think that's been the message to Republican members, which is, look, this is the budget outline. It gets our tax cuts through, the pro-growth agenda, the pro-populist agenda the president promised. We can address spending cuts in the appropriation process. So I think you'll see more to come there. That's going to be primarily on discretionary spending. You know, this incorporates within the context of the Senate rules, you can only cut spending against mandatory programs. So you're not seeing the discretionary cuts yet under DOGE. We'll see those come summer and fall, and I expect them to be significant. The president has actually now called for a balanced budget. This is the first time in his 10 years on the public stage he's called for a balanced budget. So I think people recognize that that's a problem, but I think that this is the first shot in a battle that'll be carried through the midterm elections. And I think President Trump is dead set on winning that election and making sure the Democrats don't come in on their kind of impeachment mission one more time. So he's focused like a laser on making sure that we have winning issues to run on and boxing the Democrats into positions they're not going to like supporting next year.
I mean, I think we got about 40 seconds left, Richard. I mean, I think the conventional wisdom is that Republicans are going to lose the House. Historically, that's how it's been. It's only happened a couple of times where the in-party in their first midterm has not lost any seats or even gained seats. So it would be a remarkable thing if Republicans were to manage to hold on to the House.
Look, 98 and 2002 were the last two times in the last 60 years where the party in power gained seats in the midterm election. Trump knows what he's up against. And I think that's what's so brilliant about this bill is from a policy point of view, the Democrats have voted against popular issues that the people in blue states care about. So they're going to target those 13 members that are sitting in Trump districts, and they're going to focus on Senate races against congressmen who voted the wrong way.
All right. We will leave it there. Richard Porter, contributor to Real Clear Politics. Richard, thanks for your time. Always great to have you.
Thanks, Tom.
All right. Going to take another quick break, and we'll be right back with more Real Clear Politics on SiriusXM after this.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief of Real Clear Politics, talking now with Cleta Mitchell, a lawyer who runs the Election Integrity Network. She's the chairman and I believe founder. It's the group. It's a self-explanatory title. The group is interested in election integrity, which I don't know how much of that we still have in this country, but we need it. Cleta, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Carl. Great to be with you.
Now, I've known Cleta a long time, you guys, and she's a Democrat turned Republican turned independent. So she sees both. She's like me. She sees different sides of this issue. But Cleta, on election integrity, President Trump signed an executive order, and it was, it's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle. You've had all these executive orders, all these challenges, all these lawsuits, but this was an important issue. And once again, a federal district court judge decided this was not constitutional. It's Judge Kolar Catelli. She's a veteran of the district court. I mean, I think she's appointed by President Reagan, if I remember right. But she threw out this executive order was 14248, and she found it wanting. And you think that the president had it right and the judge had it wrong. Tell our listeners what this executive order did and why the court didn't go along.
Well, look, like all the executive orders that President Trump has issued, there is a huge leftist, well-funded network of groups that file legal challenges all over the country. In this particular case, the president issued an executive order, as you said, 14248, which it has several sections. This judge dealt with only really two sections, but and she got it wrong on the law. But this particular executive order is based on the statutory responsibilities in this particular portion of the executive order of the Election Assistance Commission, which is a federal agency. Now, Congress has set up some what they call independent agencies, and those agencies have come under scrutiny by the Supreme Court, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau for one, others, but this is considered an independent agency. I don't think that's constitutional in and of itself. But what the president directed the EAC, the Election Assistance Commission, to do was to amend the federal voter registration application to require proof of citizenship when somebody registers to vote. Now, this is a form that is established by the EAC as required by the National Voter Registration Act, which was Bill Clinton's #1 bill when he was elected president. So it's been on the books since 1993. And it governs voter registration. That's why we vote at the driver's license agencies, register to vote at driver's license agencies, et cetera. And one of the things that has become apparent over the years is that the little checkbox that says, are you a citizen, which is what's on the form, is insufficient to make sure that only citizens are registering. So there's been a lot of work over the last year by people like me and others to get Congress to require that the EAC amend the form. The president directed the agency to undertake a process for amending the form to require documentary proof of citizenship, something that, by the way, 89% of the American people support. So this judge said, no, the president has no authority to direct this agency to do anything. And but there are other provisions of the executive order on election integrity issues and election law that are left untouched by this particular order. But I feel sure that there is more coming because there are left-wing challenges in both Massachusetts and Washington State over the rest of the bill.
So my friend and colleague Tom Bevan thinks that these plaintiffs' lawyers, these I don't know what public interest lawyers are shopping for
Definitely.
specific judges in courts to bring. Is that your impression too?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you another thing, another big issue that we don't talk about very much is that judges. There are two set standards in this country, two legal standards for who has standing to bring any kind of a federal court action. There seems to be one standard if you're a Democrat candidate or a left-wing group, and you always have standing. And if you are a conservative organization or a citizen or a Republican candidate, you don't have standing. So there's actually a case that the Supreme Court is considering taking up today, I think in the conference this week or next week, to start to settle these issues of standing, because I think a lot of these challenges to executive orders around the country, it is judge shopping, venue shopping. And I think that some of these groups don't have standing under federal standing statutes. So it's a big problem for our country when you have judiciary. We have the judiciary so completely in a one-sided environment, which is what I think has happened to our judicial branch of government.
You're listening to Cleta Mitchell, chairwoman of the Election Integrity Network. I'm Carl Cannon, Washington Bureau Chief, RealClearPolitics. Cleta, I want to ask you a specific question about this judge, and then maybe broaden it to more cosmic issues of election integrity. But Judge Kohler-Catelli is appointed by Ronald Reagan. So why would she have a view of in the Reagan administration? No one would have thought that you could vote if you're a non-citizen. Why is she so adamant on this issue? What's her bent?
Well, she's a liberal judge. I dealt with her, knew about her when I was practicing in private practice and in the campaign finance context. And she always sided with the liberal groups, Project 21 or whatever, Fred Wertheimer and all those Common Cause and all that.
Fred Wertheimer, yes.
But the fact of the matter is, it's a real misnomer, Carl, when people say, oh, this is a Trump appointed judge or this is a Reagan appointed judge. The truth is that when you come to trial court judges, historically, those have been picked by senators in the District of Columbia. It's more or less, they're all Democrats. You don't really have any Republicans to choose from. And so trial court judges all across the country have really been more patronage than they have been ideological. Now, I think we're going to see some changes in that this presidential term, frankly. I think that some of those ways that senators have had of picking judges and offering those to the president, historically, the White House has let the senators choose trial court judges, and then they've just been rubber stamped by the president. I think we're going to see some changes in that. And I think there's a real problem in the judicial branch of government because they tend to come from the same schools, have the same mind frame, and it's not a conservative mind frame, and it's certainly not a MAGA mind frame. I would bet you that if you did polling of federal judges across the country, you would probably find not many of them would consider themselves Trump supporters. And that's what we're up against. I think that's a very dangerous constitutional predicament that we're in, because the courts and the Constitution were supposed to be, the inferior courts were supposed to be the least important branch. The least important branch. The only court that's mentioned in the Constitution is the Supreme Court. Congress has plenary authority to determine the jurisdiction, the makeup, the composition, the rules, everything for the inferior courts, just the district courts, the appellate courts. So I think we're going to we have a real constitutional challenge on our hands. If we can get the legislative branch of government to function again, then they need to take this up and deal with it, because I think we're headed for serious constitutional issues when you have an unelected, supposed to be the least important branch, dictating to the president of the United States and the entire executive branch how to conduct business. That isn't what our founders intended.
Yeah, and unelected. That's the
Unelected, lifetime appointments.
Yeah. So, all right, we got about a minute left. Let's expand on election integrity, a broad view of that. What are the threats to election integrity? The Democrats always talk about voter suppression and the Republicans always talk about voter fraud. It doesn't seem to me there's a hell of a lot of either one, but in these close elections, a little bit of fraud and a little bit of suppression maybe go a long way. But why can't the two parties get together? And it seems to me, in a functional democracy, the Democrats want to make it easier to vote. The Republicans want to make sure that, okay, but if it's easier to vote, let's make sure that people voting actually are allowed to vote and only vote once. It seems to me that you could craft legislation that would do both of these things, and that each party could get behind it. You could approach this in a bipartisan way, but that's not how this is going.
Well, I come back to the what Scott Rasmussen, the pollster, calls the elite 1% of the country. And if you look at the data, we have created something. If you go to our website, www.electionintegritynetwork.org, electionintegritynetwork.org, we have what we call the 10 principles of the Citizens Elections Bill of Rights. And it goes through each of the principles that we think are necessary to have a system, because remember, the election process is a system. It's not just one thing. It's the foot bones connected to the ankle bones connected to the leg bone, et cetera. And so we have developed over the last 4 years the 10 principles. But the problem is, and let me just say, we had Scott Rasmussen poll all of these principles in January. And guess what? People support these principles. From the lowest percentage support was 59%. Everything else is 60%, 70%. 5 of these principles have over 80%, and clean voter rolls is over 90%. But there are groups on the left, and Mark Elias, who threatened every county in Georgia 2 years ago, that if they removed bad registrations, Mark Elias would sue them. So you have this elite group of Democrats and people on the left who are completely out of step with the rest of the people in America on all of these principles of election integrity. So we can't sit down and bargain with them, because they really oppose everything we believe in, which is it should be easy to vote, but it should be hard to cheat. And right now, it's easy to vote and easy to cheat, and we need to fix that.